The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty main street of Knights Ferry, California, and when the door opened, Nathan Kane saw her face and felt something shift in his chest like a landslide breaking loose after years of stillness. The woman descended carefully, one hand gripping the frame while the other clutched a worn carpetbag. And even from across the street where he stood outside the general store, he could see the purple bruise blooming around her left eye like some grotesque flower. Her hair was the color of autumn wheat, pulled back in a loose bun that had come undone during the long journey, and her dress was simple calico, faded from too many washings but clean and pressed with obvious care. She looked to be in her middle 20s, though the shadow of pain on her face made her seem older in some ways and heartbreakingly young in others. Nathan had been loading supplies into his wagon, preparing for the ride back to his ranch 15 miles outside town. But he found himself frozen in place, watching as the woman stood on the wooden sidewalk looking lost and uncertain. The year was 1878, and Knights Ferry was a small but growing town nestled along the Stanislaus River, a place where gold fever had long since passed, but the bones of ambition remained. Most folks minded their own business here, kept their heads down and their noses clean, but Nathan had never been good at looking away when someone needed help. He was 30 years old, tall and broad-shouldered from years of working cattle and mending fences, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds over the Sierra Nevada. His father had died 2 years back, leaving him the ranch and a silence that sometimes felt heavy enough to crush him. He lived alone except for his ranch hands who stayed in the bunkhouse, and most days that suited him just fine. Most days. The woman glanced around the street, her good eye wide and searching, and Nathan saw the exact moment panic began to set in. She was clearly expected by no one, had nowhere to go, and the afternoon sun was already beginning its descent toward the western hills. In another hour, the decent folk would be home for supper, and the other kind would be emerging from the saloons looking for entertainment. He crossed the street without allowing himself time to reconsider, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. When he reached her, he removed his hat and held it against his chest the way his mother had taught him before consumption took her when he was just 14. "Madam," he said, keeping his voice gentle and low, "my name is Nathan Kane. I own a ranch outside town. I do not mean to intrude, but you look like you might need some assistance." She turned those eyes on him, one green as spring grass and the other swollen nearly shut, and he saw her measure him in that quick way women had of determining whether a man was dangerous or kind. Something in his face must have satisfied her because her shoulders dropped just slightly from their defensive hunch. "I am Julia Jameson," she said, and her voice was softer than he expected, with an accent that spoke of education and eastern cities. "I was supposed to meet someone here, but I think perhaps I made a mistake in coming." "Who were you meant to meet?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the carpetbag handle. "A woman named Mrs. Henderson. She advertised for a companion and assistant in the Boston papers. We corresponded for months, and she seemed kind in her letters." Nathan knew everyone in Knights Ferry worth knowing, and he had never heard of any Mrs. Henderson. The realization must have shown on his face because Julia's remaining color drained away, leaving her pale as milk. "There is no one by that name in this town," he said carefully. "At least not that I know of, and I have been coming here my whole life." "I see." Her voice had gone flat, empty of everything except exhaustion. "Then I have been foolish." "You have been deceived," Nathan corrected, anger flaring hot in his belly at whoever had lured this woman across the country with false promises. "That is different than being foolish. That is being the victim of someone else's cruelty. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them that he could not name but felt deep in his bones. Thank you for the distinction, Mr. Kane, though I am not sure it changes my current predicament. You have family back east. Someone who could send you money for return passage. The way her jaw tightened told him everything he needed to know. No, no family who would welcome me. He glanced at the black eye again, and understanding crystallized. She was running from something or someone. She had come west because she had nowhere else to go, and now even her last hope had proven false. The thought of leaving her here, alone and vulnerable in a town full of strangers, made his stomach turn. I have a proposition for you, Miss Jameson, he said, surprised by his own words even as he spoke them. My ranch is good-sized, and I do well enough for myself, but I have been managing the household myself since my father passed, and I am making a mess of it. I could use someone to help with the cooking and the house, and in return I can offer room and board and fair wages. Nothing improper, he added quickly as her eyes widened. There is a small cabin on the property that my parents used to rent to the schoolteacher before she married. It needs some fixing up, but it is sound and private. Julia studied him for a long moment, and he forced himself to stand still under her scrutiny, to let her see that he meant what he said. Finally, she took a breath. Why would you offer this to a complete stranger? Because you need help, and I need help, and sometimes things work out simple as that. He put his hat back on. Because no one should be left alone in a strange place with nowhere to turn. And because whoever gave you that black eye should never have the satisfaction of knowing they drove you to ruin. Her hand came up unconsciously to touch the bruise, then fell away quickly. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. If I accept, Mr. Kane, I need you to understand something. I will work hard for my keep, and I will give you no cause for complaint, but I cannot go back. Whatever happened in Boston must stay in Boston. Fair enough, Nathan said. We all have things we would rather leave behind. Then I accept your offer, Julia said, and extended her hand to shake on it like a man might. Her palm was small and soft in his work-roughened grip, but her handshake was firm. Thank you, Mr. Kane, you are very kind. Nathan, he said. If we are going to be living on the same property, we might as well use given names. With your permission, Miss Jameson. Julia, she said, and the smallest smile touched her lips despite everything. My name is Julia. He loaded her carpet bag into the wagon alongside his supplies and helped her onto the seat, careful not to touch her more than necessary. She settled beside him with her hands folded in her lap, back straight despite the obvious exhaustion dragging at her. As he snapped the reins and the horses started forward, Nathan wondered what in God's name he had just done, inviting a strange woman to his ranch based on nothing more than a bruised face and a gut feeling that she needed protection. The ride out of town took them along the river road, where cottonwoods grew thick and the water ran clear and cold even in late summer. The sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, and Nathan watched Julia from the corner of his eye as she took in the landscape. Some of the tension eased from her shoulders as they left the town behind, and he realized she had been braced for pursuit, for someone to come after her even here. Tell me about your ranch, she said after they had ridden in silence for several minutes. What kind of operation do you run? Cattle mostly, Nathan said, grateful for the neutral topic. About 500 head at present, though I am building up the herd. Some horses too, good California stock. I have got 4 hands who live on the property and a dozen more I hire seasonal for roundup and branding. The house is nothing fancy, but it is solid, built by my grandfather when he first came out in '49 chasing gold. He got smart quick and turned to ranching instead. Did he find any gold at all? enough to buy his first 100 acres and 20 head of cattle. After that, he said the real gold was in feeding the miners, not joining them. Julia nodded, her gaze distant. A practical man. Practical enough to survive and pass something on to his son. My father expanded the operation, made it what it is today. He was a good man, stern but fair. I learned everything I know about ranching from him. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. It has been 2 years now, but I still find myself turning to ask his opinion on things, forgetting for just a moment that he is gone. Nathan did not know why he was telling her this, revealing these small hurts he usually kept locked away. Maybe it was the way she listened, fully and completely, as if his words mattered. What about you? What did you do in Boston? Her hands tightened in her lap. I was a governess for a wealthy family. Before that, I taught at a girls' school. My father was a minister and he believed in education for women, so I was fortunate enough to receive a good one myself. Nathan asked gently. He died when I was 20. My mother had already been gone for years. I had no siblings, no close relations willing to take in a grown woman with no marriage prospects. She said it matter-of-factly, as if reciting someone else's history. I made my own way for a time. It was enough. There was a whole story in those few words. Nathan knew. A whole world of struggle and loneliness, and ultimately whatever violence had sent her running west with nothing but a carpetbag and false hope. He did not press for more. She would tell him when and if she was ready, or she would not, and either way it was her choice to make. The ranch came into view as they crested a low hill, spread out in the valley below like a promise. The main house was 2 stories, white painted wood with a wide porch and green shutters his mother had insisted on. The barn was bigger than the house, red painted and sturdy, with a corral next to it where several horses stood dozing in the late afternoon sun. Beyond that were the bunkhouse, the smokehouse, and various other outbuildings, and beyond those, the rolling pastures where cattle grazed, small as toys from this distance. "It is beautiful," Julia said, and there was something like wonder in her voice. "It is home," Nathan said simply, and realized as he said it that he wanted it to be her home too, at least for as long as she needed sanctuary. The thought should have alarmed him, this sudden protective feeling toward a woman he had known for less than an hour. But instead, it felt right in a way few things had felt since his father died. They rolled into the ranch yard, and immediately 3 men emerged from the barn, curious about the unexpected visitor. Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down, then moved to help Julia descend. She accepted his hand with a small nod of thanks, then stood straight and dignified as the ranch hands approached. "Boys, this is Miss Julia Jameson," Nathan said, his tone making it clear she was to be treated with respect. "She will be helping with the household and taking the teacher's cabin. Julia, this is Tom, Miguel, and Johnny. They work the ranch and know it near as well as I do." Tom was the oldest, a weathered man of 50 with eyes like chips of blue ice and a long scar across his jaw from a knife fight he never talked about. Miguel was broad and solid, with dark hair and a ready smile, originally from a California family that had been ranching this land before it was ever called California. Johnny was the youngest at 22, eager and hardworking, with red hair and freckles that made him look even younger than he was. All 3 tipped their hats, but Nathan did not miss the way their eyes caught on Julia's bruised face, or the way Tom's expression went hard and dangerous for just a moment before he controlled it. "Madam," Tom said, his voice gravelly but respectful, "welcome to the Kane Ranch. You need anything at all, you just holler." "Thank you," Julia said quietly. "I appreciate your kindness." Nathan directed Miguel and Johnny to unload the supplies while he showed Julia to the cabin. It sat about 100 yards from the main house, tucked beneath an old oak tree that provided shade and shelter. The structure was small, just 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it had a stone fireplace and glass windows and a door that locked from the inside. "I know it is not much," Nathan said as he pushed open the door. Dust motes danced in the shaft of sunlight that fell across the plank floor, and he made a mental note to have someone come sweep and clean before Julia moved in. "But it is sound, rain-tight, and private." Julia stepped inside, turning slowly to take in the space. There was a bed frame without a mattress, a small table with 2 chairs, a chest of drawers missing 1 pull. The fireplace had been swept clean but needed fresh kindling. The whole place had the empty feeling of somewhere unlived in for too long. "It is perfect," she said, and to his surprise her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Truly, Mr. Kane, Nathan, it is more than I hoped for. I will have the boys bring over a mattress from the main house and bedding. There should be dishes and such in the kitchen there. We can make it comfortable for you." She turned to face him fully, and in the dimness of the cabin, her bruise looked even worse, the purple spreading into shades of yellow and green. "Why are you doing this? Please tell me the truth. I have learned to be wary of unexpected generosity." Nathan met her eyes, those green depths filled with fear and hope in equal measure, and spoke from his heart. "Because when I saw you step off that stagecoach looking lost and hurt, something in me decided that you would not be hurt again, not if I could prevent it. I know we are strangers, and I know you have no reason to trust me, but I swear to you, Julia, no one will ever hurt you again, not while you are under my protection." A tear escaped and rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. "That is a dangerous promise to make." "Maybe so," he agreed, "but it is one I intend to keep." Over the following days, Nathan watched Julia transform the small cabin into a home. She scrubbed the floors and walls, washed the windows until they gleamed, and hung curtains she sewed from fabric she bought with her first week's wages. She was up before dawn each morning, starting the fire in the main house kitchen, and preparing breakfast for Nathan and the hands who did not cook for themselves in the bunkhouse. She cleaned and organized with fierce efficiency, tackling years of bachelor neglect with an energy that seemed born of desperate need to prove her worth. Nathan tried to tell her she did not need to work so hard, that he had hired her as much to give her a place to stay as for any labor, but she just smiled and kept working. He came to understand that the work was her way of reclaiming something, of building walls between herself and whatever she had fled. He noticed things about her as the days passed. The way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she positioned herself in rooms so she could always see the door, the way she never fully relaxed, even when laughing at something Tom said or listening to Miguel's stories about growing up on his family's rancho. She was a woman waiting for the other boot to drop, for safety to prove illusory. Nathan found himself working closer to the house than usual, inventing reasons to check on things he normally would have left to the hands. He told himself it was just to make sure Julia had what she needed, that she was settling in all right. But in truth, he simply wanted to be near her. He liked the sound of her humming as she worked. He liked the way the house smelled of fresh bread and soap, and the lavender she hung to dry in the kitchen. He liked catching glimpses of her through the windows, going about her tasks with quick competence. 2 weeks after her arrival, he was in the barn repairing a broken saddle strap when he heard horses approaching fast. He stepped outside, hand automatically dropping to the revolver he wore, and felt his blood go cold. There were 3 riders, strangers, well dressed in Eastern-style suits despite the dust of travel. The man in the lead was maybe 40, with slicked back hair and a thin mustache, riding like someone who had learned the skill recently and imperfectly. Nathan walked out to meet them, positioning himself between the riders and the house where Julia was working. "Help you gentlemen." The lead rider pulled up, looking down at Nathan with barely concealed disdain. "I am looking for a woman named Julia Jameson. I was told in town she might be here." "Who is asking?" "My name is Richard Carlyle." He said it like Nathan should recognize it, should be impressed. "Miss Jameson is my fiancé, and I have come to bring her home." Every word Nathan wanted to say got stuck behind his teeth. He kept his face neutral, his voice level. "I have got a woman named Julia working for me, but she has not mentioned any fiancé. Maybe you have got the wrong person." "I assure you I do not." Carlyle's voice had steel in it now. "We were to be married in Boston 6 months ago." She became overwrought and confused, and she ran away before I could help her understand her error. I have been searching for her ever since. Nathan heard the cabin door open behind him, heard Julia's sharp intake of breath. He did not turn, did not take his eyes off Carlyle, but he spoke to her. "Julia, do you know this man?" "Yes." Her voice was barely audible. "I know him." "Is he your fiancé?" There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "He was. I broke our engagement." Carlyle's expression tightened. "My dear, you were not of sound mind." The strain of wedding preparations, the pressure, it became too much. "I forgive you, of course, but it is time to come home now and fulfill your obligations." Nathan heard Julia move closer behind him, and when she spoke, she was right at his shoulder. "I will not go back, Richard. I told you that in my letter." "A letter written in obvious distress," Carlyle said smoothly. "You are not thinking clearly, Julia. You never have been very good at managing your own affairs. That is why you need a husband to guide you." I said no. Julia's voice shook but held firm. "I do not want to marry you. I do not want anything to do with you. Please leave." Carlyle's civilized mask slipped, and Nathan saw the anger beneath, the sense of ownership and outrage. "You think you can just humiliate me like this? You think I spent a year courting you, spent money on you, only to have you run off like some common whore?" Nathan moved before he realized he was moving, stepping forward and putting his hand on the bridle of Carlyle's horse. "That is enough. The lady has made her wishes clear. You need to leave now." "This is none of your concern," Carlyle said, his hand moving toward his coat. "This is between myself and my fiancée." "She is not your fiancée." Nathan's voice went low and dangerous. "And she is under my protection. You need to turn around and ride back to wherever you came from." The two men with Carlyle shifted in their saddles, clearly hired muscle rather than friends. Nathan was aware of Tom, Miguel, and Johnny emerging from various points around the ranch yard, drawn by the sound of raised voices. They spread out casually, but the message was clear. Carlyle was outnumbered. "You cannot keep her here against her will." Carlyle tried, changing tactics. "That is kidnapping." "No one is keeping me anywhere," Julia said, stepping forward to stand beside Nathan. Her whole body was rigid with fear, but her voice did not waver. "I choose to be here. I choose to work for Mr. Kane. I choose to have nothing more to do with you. If you do not leave, I will go to the sheriff and swear out a complaint." "For what?" Carlyle laughed, but it was an ugly sound. "I have broken no laws." Julia pulled back her sleeve, revealing a ring of yellow-green bruises around her wrist in the perfect shape of finger marks. "You broke plenty of laws, Richard. The question is whether I am brave enough to speak them aloud." Carlyle's face went red, then white. "You would not dare. No one would believe you. You have no proof." "She has got marks on her body that say different," Nathan said quietly. "And I am guessing if the sheriff in Boston went asking questions, he would find other women with similar stories. Men like you do not start out violent. You work up to it. For a moment, Nathan thought Carlyle might do something stupid. The man's hand hovered near his coat, and the muscle in his jaw jumped with the effort of controlling his rage. But then Tom moved closer, his hand resting casual on his own gun, and Miguel did the same on the other side. "This is not over," Carlyle said, jerking his horse's head around. "You will regret this, both of you." "Keep riding," Nathan said, "and do not come back. Next time I will not be so polite." They watched the three riders gallop away, dust rising in their wake. Only when they disappeared over the hill did Nathan feel Julia sag beside him, all the strength that had held her upright draining away in a rush. He caught her elbow, steadying her. "Are you all right? I thought I had gotten far enough away," she whispered. "I thought he would not find me." "How did he know to look here?" "I do not know. I was so careful." She pressed her hands to her face and Nathan could see them shaking. "He will not give up. He cannot stand to be defied. He will come back." "Then we will be ready," Nathan said firmly. "But Julia, I need to know what we are dealing with. I need to know what happened in Boston." She looked up at him, and the fear in her eyes made him want to put his fist through something. "Can we go inside? Please?" He followed her into the main house, into the kitchen where she had been baking bread before Carlyle arrived. The room smelled of yeast and warmth, such a contrast to the cold knot of dread in Nathan's stomach. Julia sat down at the table, her hands folded in front of her, and began to speak. "Richard Carlyle is a wealthy man, the son of a shipping magnate. I met him when I was governess to his sister's children. He was charming at first, attentive in ways I was not used to. I had been alone for so long, and he made me feel special, cared for. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes." She paused, swallowing hard. "The engagement was long, nearly a year. He said he wanted to do things properly, to introduce me to society, to prepare me for my new role. But as the wedding approached, he began to change. Small things at first. He did not like how I dressed, how I spoke. He wanted to remake me into someone else, someone more suitable to be his wife. When I objected, he became angry." Nathan felt his jaw tighten but said nothing, letting her tell it in her own time. "The first time he hit me was 3 months before the wedding. I had laughed at something during a dinner party, and he said I sounded like a horse. When we were alone, he struck me across the face and told me I had embarrassed him. He apologized afterward, said it would never happen again, that the stress of business had made him lose control. I believed him." She laughed, a bitter sound. "I believed him the second time too, and the third. But by then I was starting to see the truth. He did not love me. He wanted to own me, to control me. The wedding was not about partnership, it was about possession." "So you ran," Nathan said softly. "So I ran. I broke the engagement by letter, packed what I could carry, and used my savings to buy passage west. I answered the advertisement from Mrs. Henderson because it seemed like fate, like a door opening just when I needed it most. I should have known it was too good to be true." "You could not have known it was a false advertisement." "Could I not?" Julia's smile was sad. "I was desperate, Nathan. Desperate people make foolish choices. You made a brave choice," he corrected. "You chose freedom over safety. That takes courage." She reached across the table and took his hand, the gesture surprising them both. Her fingers were cool and small in his. "Thank you for standing up to him. Thank you for not making me go back." "I told you," Nathan said, turning his hand to clasp hers properly. "No one will hurt you again." "I meant it." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined across the table, something unspoken but profound passing between them. Nathan felt it settle in his chest, warm and sure. This woman mattered to him. How much and in what ways, he was not quite ready to examine, but the truth of it was undeniable. The days after Carlyle's visit were tense. Nathan found himself watching the horizon, waiting for the man to make good on his threat. He moved Julia into the main house, giving her a room on the second floor with a lock on the door, and he slept with his gun within easy reach. The ranch hands took turns keeping watch at night, and Tom rode into Knight's Ferry to speak with the sheriff, a man named Bill Cooper who had known Nathan's father. Cooper rode out to the ranch 2 days later, a lean man in his 50s with a badge pinned to his vest and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened while Julia told her story, his expression growing darker with each detail. "I cannot arrest him for what happened in Boston," Cooper said when she finished. "That is out of my jurisdiction, but I can make it clear he is not welcome in this county. And if he sets foot on this property again without invitation, that is trespassing. You would be within your rights to defend yourselves." "I do not want violence," Julia said quickly. "I just want to be left alone." "Sometimes wanting peace and getting it are two different things, miss," Cooper said gently. "But I will do what I can to encourage Mr. Carlyle to move along. Men like him, they are used to getting their way, but they are also used to comfort. Make things uncomfortable enough, and he might decide you are not worth the trouble." After Cooper left, Nathan found Julia standing on the porch, staring out at the pastures where the cattle grazed peacefully. He came to stand beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her in the cool evening air. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I have brought you nothing but trouble," she said quietly. "That I should leave before things get worse." "Where would you go?" She had no answer for that. "You are not trouble, Julia," Nathan said, choosing his words carefully. "You are a person who deserves safety and respect and the chance to build a life on your own terms. If staying here helps you do that, then you should stay. And if trouble comes, well, it would have found me eventually anyway. Trouble always does." She turned to look at him, and in the fading light her eyes were luminous. The bruise had faded to pale yellow, barely visible now, and he could see the true shape of her face, the delicate bones and fine features, the strength in the set of her jaw. "You are a good man, Nathan Kane," she said. "Better than I deserve." "You deserve everything good," he said, and meant it with his whole heart. "Do not let anyone tell you different." She smiled then, a real smile that transformed her whole face, and Nathan felt something in him shift and settle like a puzzle piece finding its place. He was falling for her, he realized. Maybe had been falling since the moment he saw her step off that stagecoach. The knowledge should have terrified him, but instead it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The weeks passed, and Carlyle did not return. Sheriff Cooper sent word that the man had been seen boarding a train east, though whether he had truly given up or was simply regrouping was anyone's guess. Julia remained cautious, but slowly, Nathan watched her begin to relax, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was truly safe here. She proved to be an excellent cook, better than anyone who had ever worked in the ranch kitchen. She made bread that was light as air, stews that stuck to a man's ribs, pies that had the hands begging for seconds. But more than that, she brought life back to the house. She filled it with small touches, a vase of wildflowers on the table, curtains in the windows, the sound of her singing as she worked. The place had been just a building since Nathan's mother died. Julia made it a home again. Nathan found excuses to spend time with her. He started taking his midday meal at the house instead of eating with the hands. He helped her in the garden she planted, turning the soil and building raised beds while she decided what to grow. They talked about everything and nothing, easy conversations that flowed like water. She told him about her childhood in Boston, about her father's church, and the books he had let her read from his library. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to ride and rope, and all the skills his father had deemed essential. One evening in late October, They sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple that seemed impossible in their vividness. Julia had brought out coffee and they sipped it in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. "I have been thinking," Julia said carefully, "about what comes next." Nathan's heart clenched. "Are you planning to leave?" "No," she said quickly, and relief flooded through him. "No, but I cannot work as your housekeeper forever. It is not proper me living here, even with my own room. People talk." "Let them talk," Nathan said, more harshly than he intended. "Anyone with eyes can see you are a respectable woman working an honest job. Even respectable women have reputations to protect," Julia said gently. "I am grateful for everything you have done for me, Nathan. You saved me in more ways than one, but I need to think about my future. I need to figure out what my life looks like now that I am free." Nathan set down his coffee cup, his mind racing. He knew what he wanted to say, but the words felt huge, too big to speak aloud. Still, if he did not say them now, he might never get another chance. "Julia," he began, then stopped, searching for the right words. "These past months, having you here, it has meant more to me than I know how to say. This place, it has been lonely since my father died. I did not realize how lonely until you arrived and filled it back up with warmth and life. I wake up looking forward to the day because I know I will see you. I find reasons to come back to the house just to hear your voice. You have become important to me in ways I am probably not saying very well." She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable in the gathering darkness. "Nathan, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I have feelings for you," he said plainly, abandoning eloquence for honesty. "I am saying that the thought of you leaving makes me feel like someone reached into my chest and grabbed hold of my heart. I am saying that if you need a future, I would like to be part of it. If you would have me." Julia was quiet for so long that Nathan began to think he had made a terrible mistake, that he had misread everything, that she saw him only as an employer or at best a friend. But then she reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I have feelings for you too," she said softly. "I have tried not to, tried to tell myself it was just gratitude or the relief of feeling safe after so long being afraid, but it is more than that. When I am with you, I feel like myself again, like the person I was before Carlisle tried to break me into pieces. You make me remember what it feels like to be happy." Nathan brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gentle gesture that made her breath catch. "Then stay. Not as my housekeeper, but as my partner. Marry me, Julia. Help me build something here, a life worth living." "Nathan, I am damaged goods," she whispered. "I was engaged to another man. I have been marked by violence. I come with nothing but a carpetbag and a past I would rather forget." "You come with courage and strength and a heart big enough to risk loving again after being hurt," Nathan said fiercely. "You come as yourself, Julia, and that is more than enough. That is everything." She was crying now, tears catching the last light as they rolled down her cheeks. "Are you sure? Are you truly sure this is what you want?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," Nathan said, and pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as she buried her face in his shoulder and wept. He held her while she shook, pouring out months of fear and pain and pent-up emotion, and he made silent promises to whatever gods might be listening that he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never had cause to cry like this again. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear, and there was a smile on her face that made his heart stutter. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Nathan cupped her face in his hands, careful and reverent, and kissed her for the first time. Her lips were soft and sweet, and she kissed him back with a hesitant joy that gradually grew bolder. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "We will do this right," he promised. "Proper courtship, proper wedding. I want everyone to know you chose me of your own free will." "I do choose this," Julia said. "I choose you, Nathan Kane. I choose this life, this future. I choose happiness." They were married 6 weeks later in the little church in Knight's Ferry, with half the town in attendance and the ranch hands serving as groomsmen. Julia wore a dress of cream-colored silk that she sewed herself, working late into the nights by lamplight, and she carried wildflowers from the ranch, autumn blooms in shades of gold and purple. Nathan wore his best suit, the one his father had been buried in, brushed clean and pressed with care. Sheriff Cooper gave the bride away, and old Reverend Thomas performed the ceremony. When it came time for the vows, Nathan's voice rang out clear and strong as he promised to love and honor and protect. Julia's voice shook only slightly as she promised the same, and when Thomas pronounced them man and wife, the whole church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food enough to feed an army. Tom played the fiddle, Miguel the guitar, and people danced under the stars while the fire crackled and the night air filled with laughter. Nathan held Julia close as they swayed to the music, and he thought his heart might burst from the sheer fullness of it. "Happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "Deliriously," she said and laughed, the sound pure and free. "Is this real, Nathan? Tell me this is real and not some dream I will wake from." "It is real," he promised. "You are my wife, and I am your husband, and we have the rest of our lives to prove it to each other." Later, after the guests had gone home and the hands had retired to the bunkhouse, Nathan carried Julia over the threshold of the main house, now truly their home. He set her down gently in their bedroom, the room that had been his alone for so long and now was theirs together. Candles flickered on the dresser, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the bed was made up with fresh linens that smelled of lavender. Julia turned to him, and he saw nervousness in her eyes mixed with trust and something warmer, deeper. He went to her slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted, but she did not. Instead, she reached up and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers fumbling slightly with the task. "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for," Nathan said quietly. "We have all the time in the world." "I want this," Julia said, meeting his eyes. "I want you. I want to claim this part of my life back, to have it be something beautiful instead of something I fear." "Show me it can be beautiful, Nathan." So he did, with patience and tenderness and a slow reverence that made her gasp and sigh, and eventually cry out his name like a prayer. He learned the landscape of her body, the scars she carried both visible and hidden, and he worshipped every inch of her until she understood in her bones that she was cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, her head on his chest and his fingers trailing through her hair, and he felt more at peace than he could ever remember being. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I do not think I have said that yet today." "I love you too," Julia whispered back. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself," Nathan said. "You had the courage to run, to start over, to take a chance on a stranger offering help. I just got lucky enough to be that stranger." She kissed his chest, right over his heart. "We both got lucky." The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Julia had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping and reaching for Nathan in the dark. He would hold her and murmur reassurances until she calmed, until she remembered she was safe. Some sounds made her flinch. Sudden movements still triggered that hunted look in her eyes. But as the months passed, Nathan watched her begin to truly heal, to believe in her safety and his love. She threw herself into ranch life with the same fierce determination she had brought to everything else. She learned to ride, though she was never comfortable on horseback the way Nathan was. She helped with the accounts, her neat handwriting and head for figures turning his chaotic record, keeping into something organized and useful. She won the loyalty of the ranch hands not through any great effort, but simply by treating them with kindness and respect, making sure they had good food and mending their clothes when needed. In the spring, Julia discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan over breakfast one morning, her face glowing with a mix of joy and fear, and he had to sit down because his legs suddenly would not hold him. "Are you happy?" she asked anxiously. "I know we have not talked much about children." "Happy," Nathan laughed, a wild sound. "Julia, I am terrified and thrilled and so full of love I might explode from it. Of course I am happy." Their son was born in late autumn, when the leaves were turning gold and the air had that crisp edge that promised winter. The birth was long and difficult, and Nathan paced the floor downstairs while the midwife worked, certain he would lose either Julia or the baby or both, convinced that this happiness had been too good to last. But then he heard the baby cry, strong and loud, and the midwife called him up to meet his son. Julia was pale and exhausted, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, but she had never looked more beautiful. She held their baby against her chest, and when Nathan sat beside her on the bed, she turned so he could see the tiny face, the miniature features, the shock of dark hair so like his own. "We have a son," she said wonderingly. "Nathan, we have a son. What should we name him?" Nathan asked, his voice rough with emotion. Julia thought for a moment. "What was your father's name?" "Thomas. Thomas William Kane." "Then this is Thomas as well," Julia said. "Thomas Nathan Kane." Nathan touched his son's tiny hand and the baby gripped his finger with surprising strength. Looking at his wife and child, at this family he had somehow been blessed with, Nathan felt gratitude so profound it was almost painful. "Thank you," he said to Julia, "for trusting me, for choosing me, for giving me this." "We gave it to each other," she said, and kissed him softly. "This life, this family, this happiness. We built it together." Young Thomas was a healthy baby, loud and demanding and full of life. Julia proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving even during the long nights when the baby would not settle. Nathan helped where he could, walking the floor with his son while Julia snatched a few hours of desperately needed sleep, changing diapers with fumbling inexperience that gradually became competence. The ranch hands doted on the baby, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to earn his smiles. Tom carved him a set of wooden blocks. Miguel taught him Spanish lullabies even though he was too young to understand, and Johnny swore the boy would be riding before he could walk, though Julia vetoed that plan immediately. Life settled into a rhythm, the days and months flowing one into another in a pattern Nathan found deeply satisfying. The ranch prospered, the herd growing, the land producing. Julia's garden flourished, providing vegetables for their table and extras to sell in town. They built a good life, a quiet life, full of small joys and simple pleasures. Thomas grew into a toddler, then a young boy, curious and bold and so like his father it made Julia laugh. 2 years after Thomas, Julia gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine Sarah, with her mother's green eyes and sunny disposition. And 2 years after that, another boy, Robert James, who was quiet and thoughtful from the start. The house that had been so empty when Julia first arrived was now full of life and noise and love. Children's laughter rang out across the yard, toys littered the porch, and the table that Nathan had once eaten at alone now sat 6 with room for guests. One evening, when Thomas was 10 and Catherine 8 and Robert 6, Nathan and Julia sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching Catherine to throw a rope, while Robert examined something in the grass with intense concentration. Do you ever think about what might have happened if you had not gotten on that stagecoach? Nathan asked, taking Julia's hand. She considered the question seriously. Sometimes, but not with regret, if that is what you are asking. Everything that happened, even the painful parts, led me here. Led me to you. Do you ever think about Carlisle, wonder what became of him? No, Julia said simply. He is part of a life I left behind. He has no power over me anymore. Nathan brought her hand to his lips. Good. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of fire. After all these years, Nathan still felt that same leap of joy when he looked at Julia, that same wonder that she had chosen him, that she stayed with him through everything. I have been thinking about expanding the ranch, Nathan said after a while. There is land to the north that is coming up for sale. Good grazing land with water access. We could grow the herd significantly. Can we afford it? With the savings we have built up and a modest loan, yes. But it would mean more work, at least in the short term. I would need to hire additional hands. Julia nodded thoughtfully. The children are getting older, more independent. I would have time to take on more of the account management if you need. And Catherine is showing an interest in helping with the garden. We could expand that too, maybe sell produce in Knight's Ferry on a regular basis. This was what Nathan loved about her, this partnership they had built. Every decision was made together, every plan discussed and refined until they were both satisfied. She was not just his wife but his partner in every sense, someone whose opinion he valued and whose judgment he trusted. Then we will do it, Nathan said. Together, like everything else. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays, and the slow growth of the children into capable young people. Thomas proved to have his father's way with cattle and horses, learning the ranch business from the ground up. Catherine was clever with numbers like her mother, and she took over more and more of the accounting as she got older. Robert discovered a talent for fixing things, and by the time he was 12, he could repair anything from a broken fence to a balky piece of machinery. Nathan watched his children grow with pride and a touch of wistfulness for their quickly passing childhood. But he consoled himself with the knowledge that they were growing up strong and confident and loved, that they would have the foundation they needed to build good lives for themselves. Julia aged gracefully, laugh lines forming at the corners of her eyes, silver threading through her wheat-colored hair. To Nathan, she only grew more beautiful with each passing year. They still made time for each other, stealing moments alone when they could, keeping that spark between them alive through the chaos of raising 3 children and running a ranch. On their 20th anniversary, Nathan took Julia on a trip to San Francisco, their first time leaving the ranch for more than a day or two since their honeymoon. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked along the waterfront holding hands like young lovers. On their last night, as they stood looking out at the bay in the moonlight, Julia leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder. 20 years, she said wonderingly. It has gone so fast. The best 20 years of my life, Nathan said. No question. Mine too, Julia agreed. Do you know what I was thinking about today? What is that? The day I arrived in Knight's Ferry. How terrified I was, how certain my life was over. And then you appeared, this stern-looking rancher offering me salvation when I had no reason to expect it. Nathan chuckled. I was stern-looking. Very, Julia said, smiling. But kind. I saw the kindness even through the sternness. That is why I trusted you. Best decision I ever made offering you that job, Nathan said. Changed my whole life. Changed both our lives, Julia corrected. We saved each other, I think. You gave me safety and a home, and I gave you someone to care for, a reason to open your heart again after closing it off for so long. Nathan kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. We gave each other a future. That is what I am most grateful for. Not just the past 20 years, but all the years still to come. They returned to the ranch to find everything running smoothly under the children's management. Thomas, now 20, had handled a difficult calving situation with aplomb. Catherine had balanced the books and managed the household without a hiccup. Robert had fixed the barn door that had been sticking for months. Nathan and Julia looked at each other and realized their children did not need them quite as much as they once had. "They are growing up," Julia said that night as they got ready for bed. "They are," Nathan agreed. "Soon enough they will be starting families of their own." The thought was bittersweet but also right. This was what they had raised their children for, to go out into the world capable and confident. Thomas married first, to a sweet girl named Emma from town whose father owned the general store. They built a house on the northern edge of the ranch property, and a year later, Julia and Nathan became grandparents to a baby girl named Rose. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Nathan felt the circle of life complete itself in the most satisfying way. Catherine married a young lawyer named David, who moved to Knight's Ferry from Sacramento. They settled in town, where Catherine helped run his practice while continuing to manage the ranch accounts remotely. She gave birth to twin boys, Jacob and James, who were a handful from the moment they arrived. Robert was the last to marry, taking his time to find the right person. When he did, she was perfect for him, a quiet woman named Sarah who shared his love of mechanical things. They took over the main house when Nathan and Julia decided to move into the cabin, the same little cabin Julia had first occupied when she arrived all those years ago. "It has come full circle," Julia said as they settled into the familiar space, now renovated and expanded but still fundamentally the same. "We started here in a way, now we end here." "Not ending," Nathan corrected, pulling her close, "just beginning a new chapter." They were in their 60s now, still healthy and active but content to let the younger generation take on the bulk of the ranch work. Nathan still rode out most days to check on things, old habits dying hard, but he no longer worked sunrise to sunset. Julia still kept a garden and helped with the grandchildren, but she also had time to read and sew and simply exist without the constant press of obligations. They would sit on the porch of the cabin in the evenings, watching the sun set over the land they had built their life on, and talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes the grandchildren would visit, filling the small space with chaos and laughter. Sometimes it was just the two of them, peaceful and content in the silence they had learned to share. On a warm summer evening when they had been married for 35 years, Nathan looked at Julia and saw both the young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach and the woman she had become, all the years between written on her face in lines of laughter and love. "I need to tell you something," he said. Julia looked up from her sewing, eyebrows raised. "That sounds serious." "It is a little." Nathan took her hand. "I need you to know that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. That every day with you has been a gift I never deserved but am grateful for anyway. That if I had my life to live over, I would not change a single moment, because every moment led to you." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "Nathan Kane, are you getting sentimental in your old age?" "Maybe I am," he said, unashamed. "Is that so wrong?" "Not wrong at all," she said, setting aside her sewing to move into his arms. "I love you too. More than I have words to say. You kept your promise, you know. That first day you promised no one would ever hurt me again, and they never did. You made me feel safe, and then you made me feel loved, and then you gave me a life more wonderful than I ever dreamed possible." They held each other as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and purple. The ranch spread out around them, 3 generations of family living and working on this land, building on the foundation Nathan and Julia had laid together. "No regrets?" Nathan asked softly. "Not a single one," Julia said. "This is exactly the life I was meant to live. You are exactly the person I was meant to love." As darkness fell and the stars began to emerge overhead, they sat together in the cabin that had witnessed the beginning of their story, content in the knowledge that their love had stood the test of time. The frightened woman with the black eye and the lonely rancher who had promised to protect her had built something that would last long after they were gone, something strong and true and good. Their children thrived, their grandchildren grew, and the ranch continued to prosper under the care of the Kane family. And through it all, Nathan and Julia remained at the center, the heart of everything, their love the foundation upon which 3 generations had built their lives. In the end, it was exactly as Nathan had promised that first day. No one ever hurt Julia again. She lived out her days surrounded by love and family, safe and cherished and valued for exactly who she was. And Nathan lived knowing he had kept his word, that he had given this remarkable woman the life she deserved, and that she had given him the same in return. They grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year, proving that sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms, that sometimes the strangest beginning can lead to the most beautiful ending, and that a promise made with a whole heart is the most powerful force in the world. The story of how she arrived with a black eye and the rancher said no one will ever hurt you again became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren. A reminder that love can heal even the deepest wounds, that courage can lead to happiness, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the world rewards those brave enough to reach for something better.